Good morning guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Sebastian, a medical student from Australia. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a big study day and I'm going to try be super productive. So hopefully you guys follow along and be productive with me. But I also wanted to talk to you about my approach to lectures. So throughout the day, I'm going to be giving you 5 lessons that can help you get more out of your lectures so that you can stay more focused and that you can retain more knowledge long after the lecture is finished. But before I get into that, I just wanted to give you a quick update to where I'm currently at and to what's going on with my university. So today is the first day of a new block that I'm in, which is gastroenterology. And a week and a half ago, we finished up with our previous block, which was neurology. And I've had a week off to kick back and relax since then. So I'm really keen to get back into the swing of things, to start getting some work done and to start developing a routine again. As for our university, all of our lectures and all of our classes have pretty much moved online. As for our hospital days, we are no longer going to the hospital. They've all been pretty much cancelled for us Year 2 students. And instead they've been replaced with clinical masterclasses where they'll go through some patient cases, they'll show us some videos from their own patient experience, and that's been really helpful. But I've kind of gone off tangent a little bit, but the first lesson that I wanted to give you guys, and it's not really a lesson, it's more an outlook, but it's that lectures are not your only learning resource. So I know for me that when I was in undergraduate studies, I'd look at my curriculum and think to myself, I have 25 lectures in this subject, and if I just know everything on these 25 lectures, I will set myself up with the best chance of passing the exam. And while that is still true, it really takes more than just remembering those facts, but going beyond what you've been given. Rote learning has its place, but really what it comes down to is a good holistic understanding so that if you're trying to explain it to a friend, to a family member, or to a client, that you're gonna make sense and that you're gonna be really fluid when it comes to that explanation. So right now it's about 10 o'clock and I'm gonna try get stuck into some stuff. As you can see here, I've got my computer set up. I did a bit of cleaning in the morning to make my room nice and tidy. I find that working in a clean workspace really helps you to just stay more focused. I talked about it in a previous video, which I'll link somewhere here. But I've written up a to-do list of all the little objectives that I'm gonna try get done throughout the day. Not sure if you can see that, I'll put it on the screen. But I'm gonna try get my lectures from today completed. I'm also gonna have a look at some other resources, maybe try a few practice questions and that sort of stuff. So recently I've been trying to arrange my days sort of like a 9 to 5 as if you'd go to a work day. So I'm starting a bit later at 10, but I'm gonna try to do a quick 2-hour block where I might do 2 or 3 lectures now. And I'm gonna load up all the lectures, put on my headphones and get started. Alright guys, so I just filled up my water bottle and it's about 12 o'clock now and I managed to get 2 lectures done from this morning and I'm probably going to try get 1 more lecture done before lunchtime. But that brings us into lesson 2, which is to write down only what's important. So this is really to do with note-taking more than anything, and I know when you're listening to a lecture, it's easy to get tempted to write down everything that they're saying and to scribble down all the notes so you're not missing anything. But I find that when I used to do this, I used to just end up with all these compiled notes or like a transcript of sorts. And when I'd read through it, a lot of it was irrelevant. A lot of it didn't make sense to me now that I'm looking back at it 3 weeks later. And it just seemed like a big waste of information. It was just words that had no meaning. So what I prefer to do now is to sit back and listen. And just listen, absorb what they're saying. And then if they say any take-home messages, any major points, if they signal to you that it's going to be accessible, those are the things that I jot down, that I write down. Because the process of writing or the process of putting it on paper, putting it on your tablet, in my case, those are the pieces of information that are going to stay with you after the lecture's finished. And so I'm going to start a lecture now. I'm going to get out my iPad and I'll talk through my process. All the lecture slides are uploaded in advance, so before I begin, I make sure to save all of them on my Dropbox, which I then import into Notability, my app of choice when taking notes on my iPad. As you can see, I arranged my folders by block, so we're currently in gastroenterology, and my subjects by my different classes, so that could be lectures, seminars, practicals, clinical work. I don't do anything fancy in terms of note taking, and the only time I really write anything down is to highlight key concepts and terms or to scribble any take-home messages. Neatness is not important for me, and I prefer to annotate rather than write my own separate document of notes because half the time I feel that I refer back to the lecture slides anyways. If I'm watching a lecture recording, I normally watch it on 2x speed, but this very much depends on how quickly the lecturer is speaking, and I make sure to stop regularly, especially on the difficult parts. And during all this, I whisper to myself any information that I write down so that I'm utilizing visual, auditory, and somatosensory stimuli to hopefully maximize my chance of remembering it in the long term. Alright guys, so I got my food, but before I eat, I just want to go into the third lesson, and this is more to do with the learning process than anything, but that's to quiz yourself regularly. So say you're like me, and you've done 3 lectures in the morning, but now you want all that information that you've learned about to actually stick, and for you to remember it in the coming days. And that's where quizzing yourself comes in. So this can be writing yourself questions on your lecture notes as you go along. It could be coming back to the learning objectives, seeing what areas you're weak in, and then writing down either timestamps to be like, I want to look back at minute 45 where he explains this concept, or it could be, why does this pathway work like this? So you'll write a question down for yourself. It could also be to look at weak topic areas, things that you didn't really understand, and then go find other resources or go find other practice questions, because instead of passively just rereading it over again and for it to like not make sense, and then the 7th time you might finally understand it, instead be more active. Have a topic question, which then you want to go find and investigate and like be the detective to find the information for it. That way it's a lot more interesting, and when you do learn it and when you do find out the answer, you'll actually remember it. So lesson number 3, quiz yourself regularly. So I'm back in my room and I'm about to get stuck into some more lectures, but before I do that, a few of you guys noticed in my last video that this guy followed me around in every shot, and he is the cutest little thing. He's a penguin, a very fat penguin. His name's Bruce, and I got it as a gift from my girlfriend because we used to watch this show called Atypical. The main character, without spoiling it, he really likes penguins, so if you haven't watched it, I'd suggest checking it out. But I also wanted to sit down and say a big thanks to you guys because we're almost at 20,000 subscribers, and I think that's absolutely unreal. I remember being at like 100 not too long ago. So thank you to everybody that's recently subscribed, for watching, commenting, liking, all that sort of stuff. I really appreciate it and I do notice it. And I'm planning to do a Q&A in the next couple of weeks. So if you have any questions to ask me about medicine, about study, about life, just, I don't know, anything personal, just please comment them down below, or you can message me through Instagram, which I'll put my link somewhere here, and you can send me a message through there. But anyways, enough of that self-indulgent break. I've got a few more lectures on some more gastrointestinal stuff like diarrhea, all that good stuff. So I'm gonna get stuck into that now. Okay, so I just finished my lecture and I thought it'd be a good time to go through lesson 4, and that is to put it into the bigger picture. So every time you finish a lecture, it's useful to think about, where does this fit into the context of the other lectures that I've been doing? Where does this fit into the context of the subject that I'm learning about? We just finished a lecture on how to approach a patient with abdominal pain. So when you have something like abdominal pain, there's so many differentials. It could be celiac disease, it could be IBS, the list just goes on and on and on. But unless you know what, say, irritable bowel syndrome is, and then you have to know what inflammatory bowel disease is, then you have to know what celiac disease is. So those 3 diseases, if you just learn them one by one, so you have a lecture on each of them, and you just learn the facts and figures, and you think to yourself, awesome, I know exactly what each of those disease processes mean, I'm really well versed on this topic. But unless you think about them in relation to each other and think about, okay, where does that fit into the whole idea of a patient presenting with abdominal pain? And then now that you put them into the context of each other, you'll be able to differentiate that, oh, okay, so IBS is more of, they present with abdominal pain, they might have constipation, they might have diarrhea, but usually there's no ulceration. It's not an inflammatory mediated process, and it's a lot more common than you would have in IBD. 10 to 15% of the population usually have irritable bowel syndrome. And this doesn't just apply to all this medical jargon and this medical stuff that I'm learning about, but this applies to any sort of your subjects. If you're putting concept X and concept Y together, it'll make it a lot easier when you're trying to understand concept Z. And so how I think of lectures is that they're essentially little fragments of the big subject that you're doing, whether that be politics, whether that be ancient history. And you're given these little fragments and it'll build up this bigger picture of the subject that you're learning about. But then when you go back and revise it, I suggest starting from the higher order hierarchy, so the big picture concept. You think of the theme, and then you think of the subdivisions of that theme and what underlies all that. And then you go into the specifics after that. So start off high yield, and then go slowly further down into the more low yield or more specific niche facts. And that really helps me to save time, but it also helps me to understand what I'm learning so that if I get asked by a family member or a friend, that I can just go back to the basics, go back to the fundamental overarching theme and try explain it from first principles and then move down. So whenever I'm studying and I look behind me, I see this guy's little happy face, and I love it because he's always sending me good vibes. So if you're about to study or you were studying today, he's sending you good vibes as well.
We got history, got me feeling the nostalgia when you look at me. Thinking about what could have happened or what could have been. Finally a face I know.
Okay, so I finished all the lectures and I've got one final seminar on inflammatory bowel disease, and then that is all the theory for today.
Acting like you don't recall, it ain't impressing me. Didn't come to see your friends, I know you came for me. Like your dress, but you fit better in my wrinkled tee.
The sun has just started to set and it's a little after 5 o'clock now, which is really good timing because I just finished my last seminar. But I finished my food, I'm finished for the day, and I think it's time to burn some calories. Let's go. Hey guys, so I'm back home from my run. I've showered, tidied up, and it was a quick one today. I only did about 5 kilometers, so I'll put my stats somewhere on the screen for those running enthusiasts out there. But if you're not from Australia, the current rules is that we're allowed to leave the house for essential services, like going to the doctors, buying groceries and that sort of thing, but also for exercise. So that's why I'm able to leave the house and go for a run. And one good thing that's actually come out of the whole quarantine period and this exception rule is that I'm seeing a lot more people being outside, going to the park, especially when we're sort of like confined in our room all day. It's nice to get some fresh air and enjoy the simple things. And currently it's about 6 o'clock, almost dinner time, but I never really feel hungry straight after a run. So I'll probably do about an hour or so of some revision to try reconsolidate what I've learned today. So I'm going to boot up the computer and get into some practice questions. When I'm planning to do some practice questions, I like to use the website Past Medicine, and it's a resource I'd recommend for any med students out there. As I'm going through the questions, for any that I get correct, I make sure to check that the answer that's provided is the same reason that I had in my head, and if it is, I'll move on. And for those questions that I get wrong, I'll read through the provided notes, I'll jot down the answer, and I'll also make a note of the topic area so that I can fill this knowledge gap in a later study session. As you can see, I like to use a split screen with one side of my monitor displaying the questions and the other for Googling any pieces of information. I find that going through these questions uses a lot of mental energy, so I split my study session up into smaller blocks using the Pomodoro method, doing as much as I can in 25 minutes, then having a 5-minute break between. So I just finished going through a few practice questions, but I've yet to tell you guys my final lesson, and that's lesson 5, which is to talk through what you learn. It sounds super simple, and it is, but it's important to just vocalize what you've been learning, to talk about it to your peers, to your family, and you can do this in a bunch of different ways. If you're about to have dinner, like I am shortly, and you're with your family, with your friends, or with a roommate, and they ask you how your day's going, ask them if they want to hear what you've learned about today. They might be interested, but in most cases they probably won't be. So a more realistic approach is to get some classmates, some college friends, some university friends, and to organize, say, like a Skype call or a Zoom call at the end of the week, where you don't have to knuckle down and get into some solid study, but just to chat, to socialize, and just talk about what you guys learned throughout the week. This could be areas that you found super troubling, some gaps in your knowledge. It could be to talk about some lectures that were super interesting, some lectures that were super uninteresting, but by just getting those words out there and vocalizing through the different topics and through the different areas, it's really going to help you pinpoint some gaps in your knowledge, but also to help you remember some of the concepts that you understand correctly. If you're trying to talk about calcium-induced calcium release in the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and you're being able to describe it to your friend who doesn't understand, you pretty much know that concept down pat because you were able to teach it to someone else. And I think there's no better way to measure your understanding than to teach someone else and for them to understand it as well. That's all the lessons that I have for you today. And these were just some of the things that I use to help me get more out of my lectures. So if you choose to use some of them, none of them, all of them, I just hope that they help. And if you made it to the end of the video, remember to smash that like button and subscribe to see more content like this. I have plenty more videos on my channel, so definitely go check out those. Currently it is about 8 o'clock and it is dinner time, so I'm gonna get some food and I'm gonna relax for the rest of the evening. I might Zoom call a few friends and play some video games, that sort of thing. But anyways, thanks for making it to the end. Thanks for watching. And until next time, this was Sebastian. Stay sharp.
I see the crystal raindrops fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows in my mind when I think of you sometimes.